Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our Prime Wellness webinar today. As you can see on the screen here, we are going to be talking about the link that exists between mental health and your money. And this is a topic that we're really excited to spend a little bit of time with you to discuss, because I think oftentimes when we're looking at financial wellness and when we're going through this process of financial planning, a lot of times we get stuck in the numbers and we're really focused on the dollars and cents, and that's something that is critical to your overall financial wellness. But I think in particular for today, we want to shift that focus a little bit and talk a little bit more today about your belief systems and some of the psychology behind how and why you do what you do. What are some of the habits that you have? What's the mindset that you have? And we want to kind of peel back some of those layers in an effort to try to help you as you're managing financial stress and as you're going through the process of doing your own financial planning, that we can see that link that actually exists. And ultimately the goal is to help you to feel better about your overall situation. My name is Kyle Bingham, and I'm the Managing Director for our Financial Wellness Program. Joining me today is Kenji Noguchi. He is one of our financial consultants based out of Denver, Colorado, and he's got a lot of experience with belief systems and talking about the psychology of money. So we're really excited to have him here to join us today. Here's a quick look at what we want to try to accomplish during our time today. We're going to kick things off by talking a little bit about just financial stress in general and how much financial stress we're experiencing. Then we're going to talk about how that financial stress is then impacting other areas of our life. We're going to talk about money belief or money belief systems, what those are and how they work. We're going to also talk about how those belief systems that we have how they impact a lot of the decisions that we make, especially when it comes to our money. And then we'll close things out talking a little bit about how are we able to manage both, right? We want to be successful with the way that we're managing our money, but we also want to be successful with our mental health and making sure that we don't feel those feelings of being overwhelmed or anxious or nervous or frustrated. So we're going to talk about some steps that you can take that will help you with that process. Just to kick things off, I want to share a couple statistics with you. Each year here at Prime Capital Wellness, we do an annual financial wellness survey. And the goal of the annual survey that we conduct with our clients is really to get a snapshot of how all of you are feeling, how you're feeling when it comes to your own level of financial stress, and really just what does that landscape look like for all of you? What are the things that are going well? What are some of the things that are challenges for you? And as you can see here, one of the main statistics that we see is that folks experience financial stress. And again, I know that that's no surprise to anyone on our webinar today. And I think particularly over the last couple of years with prices and with inflation and higher interest rates, we know that stress is there. And when you look at the data, you can see that over half of you have raised your hand to say, I'm experiencing at least a moderate level of stress. But then you also have almost 15% that say, that stress is significant. So over 70% of people are feeling some of that stress. So you're not alone. And I think oftentimes a lot of people might think that they're alone in some of this stress that they're feeling. Trust me when I say that you're not. We're all feeling that. And part of what we want to do today is talk more about how can we manage that and to maintain better overall mental health. And then when you look down at the bottom of the screen there, you can see that slightly more women are going to be feeling more of that financial stress than men. But what was really interesting in our most recent survey was that the most stress is being experienced by those under 30 years of age. And then as you move along to 30 to 45, 45 to 60, and then over 60, you do see that stress level goes down somewhat. And I think in part, that has to do with the fact that as you're living your life, as you're moving through your career, you do start to do more when it comes to your financial planning and you're hitting milestones and you're putting in a lot of that work. And I think what we fail to see sometimes, especially with a younger demographics, is really talking about what we're talking about today. Understanding, where is that stress coming from? Are you creating that stress yourself? And are there ways that we can eliminate that? And again, these are going to be tips and tricks that all of you will be able to apply. And then just a couple other quick points here to talk about how this stress is now impacting us. 31% have already reported a deterioration in mental health. That mental health or that deterioration, it can come in the form of frustration, anger. It could be anxiousness. There's a lot of emotions when we're talking about, some of the financial struggles that we might be faced with. 31% then say they also are having sleep disturbances. 18% say that this stress is causing challenges in their relationships that they have. 11% also cite adverse effects to their physical health. And then 9% also raised their hand and said that I'm having some work productivity issues. So we see here that the mental health and the level of stress that you're experiencing can spill over into a lot of areas of your life. And I think that as we share what a belief system is and how we can better manage that, I think that you'll find that a lot of these areas over time can improve significantly for you. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Kenji. So Kenji, can you walk us through what are these belief systems, these money belief systems? What are they and how do they work?
It's a good question, Kyle. And, to all of our viewers out here, Kyle, I think addressed it right where, when it comes to our mental health, finance, and budgeting, we have to understand the actual mechanics and math first. But really, if you can address that psychological side of money, really empower yourself to control the emotional side of money, you'll better understand your own beliefs and behaviors. So when we talk about money beliefs here, I want all the viewers today just to think for a second about the first memory you have of money. Ask yourself, what was that first memory? And how old were you when you formed that memory? To give you an idea, I remember for me, my first memory was, it's a young kid, 5 years old. If I remember Christmas time, my grandpa used to always give us $2 bills. And he'd say, hey, those are lucky. And for me at the time, I didn't really have that money to spend on anything. But for me, it was more about a status. Like, hey, I would go show my friends, I have a $2 bill. And I felt really good about that. But for me, that's really kind of my starting point when I think about money as a first memory. So as we go through these money beliefs here, maybe you'll find yourself fitting your shoes in one of these, but the first one might be money avoidance. A lot of the times folks maybe have that first memory of saying, well, I got my first paycheck and I wanted to go out and spend that money with friends, but I had rent to pay or I had other bills to pay. So a lot of the times money avoidance is something along the lines of, well, money's bad, it's not good, I don't want to be greedy with it, and I might unconsciously, not take the responsibilities when I have to actually pay that money. So maybe you have money worship, maybe something along those lines of similar to me, where you said, well, hey, I want to keep earning money so I can go get material things because those are going to make me happy. I want to go get that new car. I got my first paycheck and I want to go get a new car, or I want to go get a new suit, or whatever it may be. You see money as something that's going to get you a means to an end to bring you happiness. And maybe money status. This is where I fall when I think about, hey, I have that $2 bill in my hands and I love showing it off to my friends because they didn't have one. Where a lot of the times I call this a belief of almost keeping up with the Joneses, right? And I think a lot of us fall victim to that at some point of, well, if I have all this net worth or I have all this other things, I have this status, and that's how I view money. And maybe very lastly, it's money vigilance. Maybe for all those penny pinchers, who say, well, I need all this money. I got to ensure I'm secure and I got to always have my budget in check and I want to make sure everything's paid on time. Well, that's good. But at the same breath, when we talk about mental health and, how this can affect you, maybe you're not spending that money to bring you joy and experiences along the way as you move forward in life. I really find that one interesting, for talking about that demographic of younger folks starting out, it's those younger folks who are feeling a lot of that mental health stress, based off of our data and surveys. So again, money beliefs, they're a big concept here where we peel that extra layer back just beyond the technicals and the mechanics and dollar signs and say, okay, well, I understand now, how do I view money and how can I control that emotional aspect? And maybe, just maybe, we can also change our perspectives as things change in our lives. So we'll move forward here and we'll take a look at the, yep, go ahead, Kyle.
I was just gonna add really quickly here too that what we need to get to the point of doing is being able to observe these emotions, and as these money beliefs start to come to light in our lives, that it's observing those emotions but not letting us judge or kind of overreact to them.
Very well said. Very well said.
And so I think the next point too that we want to look at now, we understand what the money belief systems are. Now, how do they actually affect our decision making? Can you walk through a couple of examples for us there, Kenji?
I'd be happy to. So common examples, I think, money avoidance, where, maybe you avoid looking at your bank account. You went out and went on a shopping spree and you avoid looking at your bank account because deep in your heart, hey, maybe I overspent or I didn't have that money to actually use it. So maybe that's a common example that you might see, as far as money avoidance. And if you do that, that stress builds up. Am I going to be able to pay my other bills on time? And I just want to avoid it, not look at it, push it to the side. And I think a lot of us fall victim to that. But at the same breath, it's something that maybe we can avoid by saying, hey, well, let me build my budget or rehone it and really stick to it. So maybe that could be a way that you could appease some of that stress and change that perspective. Maybe money worship. Maybe you just feel so compelled to buy those expensive items you don't need because, those possessions are just going to make you happy. Maybe it's a timepiece, maybe it's a new car, maybe it's buying that nice shirt, whatever it may be. You feel like, hey, I gotta buy these things, and those things will make me happy. Money status, again, calling it keeping up with the Joneses here, right? Where you constantly compare yourself to others and, maybe compare your net worth or feel inferior if you don't measure up. I'm at this age and I should have this or that. And I think a lot of the times, folks do that and put jeopardy on their own mental stress, saying, well, I got to be saving more, or I have to spend this money to get those things so I feel better at my place in life. A lot of the times, folks who do that maybe can't afford those things. So something to keep in mind, as far as an example goes, is it worth the squeeze or not when it comes to money status? And very lastly, again, money vigilance. If you never allow yourself to enjoy the things your money can do for you, maybe you're just too vigilant about your spending. So, maybe if you worked overtime and worked so many hours here and, you need that much needed vacation, but you just don't want to do it and make those experiences, that stress, again, builds up. You have to give yourselves a break here, folks. And really, I think that's what Kyle and I are trying to get at here today is peel that layer back. Why is it causing you stress? Understand that money belief, and then really find simple actions to say, well, what can I do? Either fine tune my budget, talk to someone, or more than anything, change your perspective, right? Maybe if you do spend that money for a good joy or experience, taking your children to Disneyland or, having that nice dinner with your significant other, maybe those things are worth it. And even in the moment, maybe it's not going right according to your budget or goals, but in the grand scheme of things, that might lower your stress levels and improve your mental health to get yourself back on track and say, hey, I'm doing okay. I'm doing the right things here. Kyle, any other examples you might be able to think of as far as money beliefs?
Yeah, I think that one thing that will really help our viewers today is kind of taking a look at how we manage both of these things simultaneously here, because we're not saying that we're just trying to force positive thinking or things of that nature. It's really going back to the root cause of why you're doing what you're doing. And just like the example that Kenji mentioned earlier, is his first thought or belief about money was back when he was 5 years old. And for the majority of us, we've all grown up in very different circumstances. And so from a very young age, we have these beliefs and these attitudes about money. And I think that the more that you come in tune with why you're thinking the way that you are, you'll have those aha moments where it makes a lot more sense as to why you're doing the different things that you're doing. And so let me kind of explain that a little bit more here. So let's say that you're somebody that's money avoidant. Is that somebody that's probably going to have and maintain a budget on a month-to-month basis? No, probably not, right? And so even when a person that's money avoidant is learning about things like budgeting or saving for retirement or paying down debt, they almost put that wall up, and we're not necessarily able to reach a person that has that as their belief system. Now, what we do and what we can do for somebody like that is to start to get them in the habit of kind of rewiring their mindset and understanding that we don't have to be completely money avoidant, and we take those steps to just simply check in on a month-to-month basis and to start that process of things like putting together a budget and a lot of the other different concepts that we always talk about here on our webinars. For somebody that's a money worshiper, they might be a workaholic, and I'm sure that some of you know a person like that. So a workaholic might be in a situation where we need to get them to slow down a little bit, and they might be thinking money over family or money over everything. And so in this example, this would be somebody that we need to say, hey, you need to be able to set aside some time to be able to talk to your loved ones and have those conversations to open up that channel of communication. Because a lot of times when you're dealing with money issues, it's usually some type of a communication issue. If you're dealing with a workaholic, again, we need to get them to kind of see what's going on, and then again, we create a plan to try to improve that communication. For a money seeker, a lot of times, or status seeker, we see overspending here. And when we're seeing a lot of overspending, those are signs that maybe they're not following a budget, but oftentimes, and like what Kenji talked about earlier, it's this status, it's this image of you're successful because of some of these different things that you have. So once again, with somebody like that, we do need to start to talk to them, because oftentimes, you see on the surface what may look like wealth, but then when you really kind of dig into the numbers and the details of a person's financial situation, what do you find out? You find out that they may be highly leveraged with debt. They have overspent on credit cards and things like that as well. So for somebody that's more of a money status seeker, it starts with getting them to trust somebody to be able to just have a conversation about money. And then the fourth example down with money vigilant, this is a person that's probably financially well when you're looking at the boxes that somebody should be checking. They have a budget. More than likely, they're not using credit cards. They're not overwhelmed with debt. They're saving for retirement. But once again, when you have somebody like that, they may be very rigid and not be willing to do and enjoy some of that money that they've worked so hard to build over the years. And I know from personal experience, that's exactly what happened with my mom when she had retired, that she had been very frugal and always worked within the box and had saved and saved and saved and never carried high amounts of debt. And then once she got into retirement, it was extremely difficult for her to use that money, because her mindset said, I always have to save, I always have to save, and I've got to be vigilant throughout my entire life with that. So the one other point too, Kenji, that I want to make here, and I'll turn it back to you for just a moment, is when we're dealing with relationships, so now we've got a spouse or a partner, oftentimes you have different belief systems with your money beliefs. You might have a money avoidant person that marries a money vigilant person. And as you can imagine, there's going to be some headbutting that's going to go on, right? Because you have one that never even wants to talk about money, and then you have the other that is very vigilant and very structured in their approach to how they manage their money. And so I think one of the takeaways, aside from just kind of helping yourself to pinpoint those belief systems, is to look at your spouse or partner, and maybe some of the financial challenges that you might be experiencing have a lot. It's less to do with maybe problems with your finances. It's more the way in which you're communicating and approaching that other person, because the way that you're looking at things is different than the way that they're approaching things in terms of how to go about money, their mindset on money and such. And I think that, you know, once you can get to that point where that channel of communication is open, then that's when we can really start to chip away. And that's really where the rubber hits the road, when we start to hit those milestones of having a budget, getting all your debt paid off, being on track for retirement, ready to transition into retirement, is when you've got a clear understanding of your situation. You're not overreacting, and you're not letting your emotions get the best of you throughout that process. So Kenji, anything else you'd like to add here?
Totally. You know, I really, be honest, I think you hit it on the nail there, Kyle, where that relationship aspect totally matters. And people, we're always going to have different beliefs, and maybe you have one belief that's stuck around for a long time, and that's okay. But, you know, as the data shows us, like, these beliefs change, you know, when life happens. Life keeps moving, whether we like it or not. And that's the reality of it. And I guess, again, the whole thing we ask is, let's change our perspectives just a little bit, depending on where you are at life. And, you know, if you can understand and, again, control that emotional side, we promise you folks, we think some of that stress is going to come down. But be honest, be open, talk to someone about it, especially if it's your partner. And maybe if you have different beliefs, you know, ask them, what's that first memory you have of money? Or even a fun exercise that I always like to encourage is, tell them money. Write down the first thing that comes to mind. You know, put that pen to paper and just draw whatever it might come to mind. Maybe it's a smiling face, maybe it's a house, maybe it's kids and a family picture, whatever it may be. I think that's a good way to uncover and identify, you know, those actual beliefs that maybe your significant other or even just yourself might have.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point, Kenji. And I think that what we want you to take away from today, really one of the overarching goals of today, is that maybe it's not that you're struggling with concepts. It's not that you don't know how to use a budget, for an example, or whatever. We can apply any principle here. Maybe it really is where you're hitting that friction is more around your mindset. And so what we would encourage you to do is to start to go back and recognize some of those triggers. And when do you let your emotions kind of take over and cloud your judgment in terms of what you're looking at from a financial standpoint? And also start to challenge some of those negative beliefs, because again, these are things that have been ingrained in all of us for years and years and decades and decades. So it's not as though you flip a switch and it's all going to change overnight, but it really does start with just a mindfulness of being aware of these belief systems that you have, and then create a manageable plan. And over the years, as I've worked with individuals and as I continue to work with individuals, everybody is going to approach their financial planning from a slightly different standpoint. And we're trying to help you to create a manageable plan, okay? And I think sometimes people might feel like these concepts and these ideas and these tools are very rigid, and they're not. What we want is to be able to help you to create something that's customized for you, that's going to set you up for the most success. And then build that resiliency. And this is another really important one. The reality of it is, financial stress is going to always be there. There's always going to be that noise, right? There's going to be things going on in the economy. There's going to be things going on in the stock market. There's going to be things going on with our jobs and just our day-to-day lives. And having that ability to maintain some of that financial resilience during some of those tough times, it really will improve your mental health significantly and allow you to be able to kind of work through those times when it is going to be a little bit more challenging and more difficult. And I can't emphasize this last one enough, is talk to somebody. I think there is still, to a certain extent, a stigma out there that when you're sitting down and talking to an advisor or a coach, that we're going to immediately jump into how much have you saved, are you on track to retire at a certain age? And those are important concepts, but our advisors and all of our financial coaches are here to help you to navigate through these things that we've talked about today, to help you to pinpoint, how are you thinking about money? What is your belief system? What is your significant other? How do they approach it? And then helping you to kind of rewire some of those thoughts and beliefs that you have, and then create a plan for you based upon how you approach your finances. And again, like we talked about, a money vigilant person is going to do it differently than somebody that's a money avoidance person, or a money worshiper, or somebody that is money status. And just because you fall into one or maybe two of these categories, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just an acknowledgement of, like, this is your view on money. So I don't want you to walk away thinking that any of this that we talked about today, it is a bad thing. It's just an awareness that I think will really make a difference as you move forward with your financial planning. And so, as I've always mentioned, we're here to help you. And I know for some of you that are tuning in today, you already have an advisor that you're working with. And so I would encourage you to reach out to that advisor and talk to them about what we've talked about today. And then for those of you that aren't currently working with one of our advisors, you can scan that QR code and set up a one-on-one with one of our financial consultants. And they're here to help you and help you to kind of navigate through exactly what we've talked about, but then also apply all of these different principles that we've talked about throughout the year as well. And then last and certainly not least, we've got our last webinar for 2024. We're going to be doing it again a little bit earlier in the month on December 18th. We're going to talk a little bit about lifestyle inflation and what that means and how you can manage that. I'll leave that QR code up for just a moment as you scan that and get registered. But as a reminder, we are going to be sending a follow-up email to all of you. It's going to have a link to the recording so you can go back and take a look at what we talked about today. I'll also put a link or an attachment for all of you to take a look at our 2024 annual wellness survey. I know that some of you might have some additional questions on some of that data, so I'll include that as well, that you can take a look at that. And again, that's something else that we're happy to talk with you about when you sit down to have a conversation with us. And with that, folks, I just want to thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to be here. I hope that this was beneficial, and I think that it will really, really help you as you kind of get to year end, reflect on the year, and as you move into 2025. I think having a good mindset, kind of knowing what your current money system, money belief system is, it's really going to set you up for a lot of success as you start moving into 2025 with all of your financial planning and such. And with that, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.